when it comes here, he ordered it for me. I don't know where he found it.
It's recording, David.
See it one more time.
You're too late.
Please. Because I would need to.
Church, the church app. It's purple with the cross. My ministry plus.
I like Dr. Pepper. That's even better.
That's Tim's.
That's really good. I like that.
They are all sweet by something.
Hey, so am I. I get it on my shirt.
There you go. His problem is he's not on
Same
dinner.
here.
Oh, we want.
I changed him to equipment,
Oh,
away from guest. If the guest thing is getting wiggy
yeah.
and not letting you on,
Yeah.
then
So it'll automatically.
I need to contact the guy running that.
Hey. Will we have issues here, you think?
No, it's charging. It was
Be all
3.
right? I know, but it'll be okay?
Yeah.
It won't go down?
No.
Okay.
No, because this is all this is doing is running that camera. It's not doing this. All it is
Right.
a remote for that.
Okay. I just
That's
want to
not
make sure.
taxing enough.
All right.
Take it down.
All right. Thank you.
This problem is strictly internet access here.
I've been thinking about when you first got here.
Jeanette's coming. They would have been here by now.
They've been here.
Where's he at? Annabelle.
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
It's using the fancy sink.
40 seconds. 40 seconds. 30 seconds.
All right, all right, all right. Here we go. It's Tuesday. It's 7 p.m. or just a little bit after. It's 7:01 actually. We started a minute late. I have to borrow back another minute. Here we go. And if it's 7 o'clock on a Tuesday night, it's time for True Seekers. And it's what, 104? Something like that. But it's a dry heat, and I love the heat.
What?
I would much rather have the heat than the winter. Oh, man.
Me too.
And if you prefer the cold, I would encourage you to sell your house, pack your stuff, and go north.
Okay, bye.
Go to Chicagoland. Go to Wisconsin. Go to Minnesota. Go to the Dakotas. Go to Canada, eh? But here we are in Texas, and it's hot, and it's summer, and what else is new, right? I was thinking today, right after where it posts on the sign out there where it says the temperature, right after that, I think I'm going to put for this week one that says, "You think this is hot?"
There you go.
And just let them think about that. So, here we are. It's True Seekers. Reminder that you can email any questions for our 5th Tuesday study questions. Questions at visionchurch.ag. All questions will be treated as anonymous. As we go through the month, we on the first Tuesday, we do Unseen Realms. On the second Tuesday, Paul's letters. We find ourselves now in which book?
Tight.
Which letter? 1 Corinthians. I think there's 16 chapters in 1 Corinthians. And then we go to 2 Corinthians, and we have a hefty number of chapters there. So we'll be in it for a while. Maybe into, 2028? I don't know. Paul's letters. Well, if there's just a few verses in each chapter, we can do 2 chapters at a time. So in all fairness, it might not take us until 2028. We're in Paul's letters. You do realize, though, after we finish Corinthians, I believe, we have worked through verse by verse every one of Paul's letters, or that which is attributed to Paul, and I'm talking about the book of Hebrews. So that will just leave 1st, 2nd, 3rd John, 1st and 2nd Peter, Jude, and James. And then we will have done the entire New Testament, with the exception of the Gospels. We did Romans. Yes, we did. We did Romans. It's in the archive. It's in the archives. I know that your life was deeply changed by the book of Romans when we went through it verse by verse. But anyway, we did go through the book of Romans. Paul's letters is what's on the 2nd Tuesday. On the 3rd Tuesday, what in the world is going on? We deal with current events, what's going on in the newspapers, what's for those of us that still look at the newspaper, what's happening online, etc., social media. Bring a biblical perspective to that. Then on the 4th Tuesday, what does the Bible say about? And we go from Genesis through maps, and we take a topic, and we try to get an overview of what Scripture says on that topic. We've done money, we've done drinking, we've done gambling, we've done handling money, all kinds of stuff. We've done that, Genesis through maps. And then when we have a 5th Tuesday and it all works out, we come early, eat spaghetti, and then we have questions. So tonight, it is the 3rd Tuesday of the month, so it's what in the world is going on? And so you will find these words seemingly on the tip of everyone's tongue in the area of politics. When I go to the next slide, I'll reveal that to you. When it comes to politics, when it comes to upcoming elections that are going to be happening, some places start in September with early voting, and then in November on election day, there'll be the midterms. We have some state offices, federal offices like Senate and House of Representatives. We have governors and mayors, district attorneys, and so on and so forth. And what you're seeing and hearing, see if you haven't been hearing these terms a lot lately in the news, online, in social media. Marxism, socialism, communism, fascism. You hear these terms all the time. All the time. So,
really what we can do is if we understand one of them gives rise to the others or connects with those others somehow in world history. And so what we're going to do is we're going to focus on, for a moment, Marxism. Marxism. Marxism borrows its name from Karl Marx. He has a background. He was born in Trier, Germany. And if you know anything about Trier, Germany, it is like the heart of religion in the nation of Germany. Loaded with cathedrals, loaded with Catholic and Lutheran churches. It's like everybody is into, historically, were in either the Lutheran or the Catholic Church in Trier. He was German by nationality, but ethnically Jewish. Think about that. Karl Marx was born into a lineage of many rabbis. Think about that. Teachers. Jewish teachers of the law of Moses. So there's a long lineage. His father decided in the early 1800s to convert to Christianity and became a Lutheran. And it was probably largely because it was more advantageous socially and for business in what was called then Prussia to be a Christian, not a practicing Jew. So, his father, I want to say it was Frederick. Was it Friedrich? That might be something. Somebody Google that and find out Karl Marx's father, and then when you get it, tell me. Just yell it out. Somebody. I could ask Siri and she would butt in, but I'm not going to. So his father, Mr. Marx, at this time, a descendant from rabbis and himself practicing Jew, converted to Christianity and became a Lutheran and had his children baptized in the Lutheran Church. Now, I don't know if you're aware of this, but in the Lutheran Church, they would practice infant baptism, christening, paedobaptism, believing that that marked and sealed their children as Christians. Heinrich? Ja, das ist der Name. Heinrich Marx was the father there. And then Friedrich was the name of Engels. We're getting ahead of ourselves. So it's Heinrich. How many of you heard of the Heimlich maneuver? Okay, so you sound like you need the Heimlich maneuver when you say Heinrich. So there you go, in Trier, Germany. And to him and his wife were born several children. One of them, Karl, raised in the Lutheran Church. Later in life, at college, maybe going into college, but in college, developed a friendship with Friedrich Engels. And Friedrich Engels' father was a very important businessman and industrialist. Because what was happening? The industrial age. And so factories and taking raw goods and turning them into bulk production, using assembly lines, all that kind of stuff was starting to come around and in Europe and this area of Germany. And Friedrich Engels' father had a lot of money, which meant what? Friedrich Engels was given a lot of money. So it's kind of advantageous for Karl Marx to have a good friend who is independently wealthy. Does Friedrich Engels need to work? No. He is what we would call a trust fund baby. What's a trust fund? Well, when people get a lot of money they're interested in not losing that money through taxation or through other means or just having it spent away. So what do? They put it in a trust. An officer of a bank or a savings and loan or another person that's qualified by law can then become a person who oversees that trust, and there are qualifications on that trust that money can only be withdrawn for certain reasons, like education, books, things like that, and make sure that a young person doesn't just take that money and run. And so it shelters that money away from taxes and designates what it's going to be used for. And trust fund babies basically have all of their bills paid and all of their needs met, their clothing purchased, all of that at the behest of the person who's in charge of the trust. And so Friedrich Engels and Karl Marx get together. I'm believing that it was when they were in college or studying later after school. And one of the things that I picked up from, I think his name is Paul Gengor, who is a historian that teaches at Grove City College. He wrote a book, Marx and Satan. And he talks about the fascination that Karl Marx has for Satan and Mephistopheles and other philosophical works that feature Satan, and musical plays that feature him, and he is very fascinated. He himself writes a play dealing with those issues. Very fascinated with Satan. There are even some letters that Heinrich, his father, writes, pleading with him to get away from this fascination with the devil and come back to his roots. He was raised better than this. On and on and on the letters go. But Karl Marx is bent. I won't put in the first word there. He's bent on that direction. So he's very fascinated with Satan. He has a lot of sympathy for the devil. Have you ever heard that expression? Sympathy for the devil? He thinks that Satan had a point. He thinks that Satan was maybe done dirty. And so he develops a sympathy for the devil and identifies with him. And so this is pointed out over and over and over and over again. Now, the relationship he has with Friedrich Engels, they're friends, but Friedrich Engels is basically supporting Karl Marx. And Karl Marx is happy to let him do it. And he's constantly going back to the well and going back to the well and trying to get more money and trying to encourage him to do stuff. So they team up, so to speak. One is the financier and the other one is the leader. Friedrich Engels is very much a follower. Karl Marx is very much a leader. So Marxism becomes a philosophy and an economic idea. With these two team up, and we've heard it this way, the Communist Manifesto. Did you ever hear that? The Communist Manifesto was written in 1848. Wonder who underwrote it? Friedrich Engels. And where did he get his money? From his trust fund. That money was earned and interest was gained on it through the economic system of what? Capitalism. So, Engels and Marx made all their money, got all their money, because of not communism, capitalism. And so they developed the Communist Manifesto in 1848. It eventually printed, not that day, not that next year, but over time, 500 million copies. The fourth best seller ever. The Communist Manifesto. So does it resonate with people? Yes. And has it resonated with people since 1848? Yeah. So this is the year 2026. We're coming up on 200 years since it was printed. And it is still popular. Isn't that interesting? That lets us know that it resonates with people. Now, one of the statements that it's most known for is from each according to his ability, to each according to his need. So, those that have ability and can generate finances or stuff, they are obligated to give it away. And if they're not willing to give it away, what's the job of government? Take it. And then that's supposed to flow to each according to his what? Need. Now, are needs pretty hard to define? Or are they easy to define? Ask a 5-year-old what they need. They need a puppy. They need a kitty cat. They need more candy. They need to sleep later. They need to do what they want to do right now. They need to not be forced to eat those peas. They need to be able to drink more soft drinks. Right? And on and on and on it goes. So when we start to define a person's needs, that gets really sketchy. One man's desire is another man's need. And so you can see that this is an issue because it's based on felt or perceived need. From each according to his ability, to each according to his need. So Karl Marx had no problem shaking his friend Friedrich Engels down from his trust fund money because that father had the ability to make money, but Marx needed it. What did he need it for? So he didn't have to work a day in his life. So he could pay for his house. So he could raise his kids, put clothes on their back. And he didn't do a very good job at any of that. He was a slovenly, nasty person. And yet, these two put this small work together of what, 50 to 80 pages? And eventually, 500 million copies of that would be printed and distributed over the decades and the centuries until there are almost 200 years of this. Marxism swept Europe. Because what was happening in Europe? They were trying to transition between the monarchy and individuals being able to develop things, manufacture things, sell things, and make large sums of money. Now, how did it used to be in Europe? Who was wealthy in Europe? The monarchy, the nobility. You had a castle, and the castle was there to protect all the villages, right? And what did everybody in the villages do? They took care of the king's deer, the king's corn, the king's grain, the king's roads, the king's trees, the king's lakes, the king's horses, and on and on and on and on it went. Everywhere there was a castle, there was a lord, there was a lady. They were just under the authority of the king. Basically, they were managing things that belonged to the king. When that all began to break apart, now you have individuals who show tremendous ability and they become wealthy. They're as wealthy as lords and ladies, and they can maybe even get a title, lord or lady, but they are disconnected in a large part from the king. And so there is this wealth out there that's not being shared. What are we going to do about that? There's a lot of people who are jealous There's a lot of people who feel passed over. There's a lot of people who say, that's not right. And who's there to say that? Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. And so Marxism sweeps Europe and the world. So in 1848, they print it. By 1900, it now sweeps into Russia. Russia was a monarchy. They had a czar, Tsar. And there was a fighting between the Bolsheviks. There was a Bolshevik rebellion under Lenin. So you had Leninism. And what happened in Russia? They rounded up anybody who looked like they were smart, that they wore glasses, that they taught. They rounded them up and they put them in the gulags, prisons. We had books written about it, like Alexander Solzhenitsyn wrote books, and there were other people who were imprisoned during those times and explained why it happened, what was going on. Clergy people, people who were preachers, teachers in the church, rounded up and declared enemies of the state and thrown into prison. What influenced that? Marxism. A little bit later, it would even hit theology. Now, what's theology? Loosely, the study of stuff about God, right? Liberation theology swept through Europe and into Latin America. And it began to talk about how people were passed over and oppressed. Then people were adopting Marxism in all kinds of forms. It was no longer just a political feature or a economic feature. Marx claimed to be or wanted to be an economist. But it became a system of thought, and they applied it to everything. Theology and everyday life in every which way, they applied this idea of Marxism. And they basically boiled it down to this. Everything in the world is the oppressor versus the oppressed. Everybody in this room is either the oppressor or the oppressed ones. And that's how simply they boil it down. This is percolating. It's happening, popping on the internet. How many of you have heard of the idea of critical theory or critical race theory? It's nothing more or less than Marxism from 1848 applied to demographics, ethnicity, and economics, and so on and so forth. They see the whole world 100% of the time, always, through this filter. Who's oppressed and who's the oppressor. That's how they see everything. It's actually very immature. It's actually the way that junior hires see the world. If you've ever taught in junior high, they are all ripe for Marxism. Because they suspect that they are being oppressed. All the teachers are conspiring to oppress them. And so the teachers and the principal, the oppressors. The junior high kids, the oppressed. And that they get offended at everything. I mean, it's just weird. But I remember riding on the bus with my fellow 6th, 7th, and 8th graders and being in school with my fellow 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And the weird stuff we all came up with in groupthink. Oh, yeah, we were just so brilliant. We had studied enough by the time we were 12, 13 to be dangerous. Androgens were being released into our bodies. Our voices were starting to change. Some of us were starting to get a little bit of a shadow of some whiskers in junior high. Some voices were starting to change, and we thought we were all that in a bag of chips. And we now understood how it was. Now, when I was a kid in junior high, one of the shows that was on all the time was Hogan's Heroes. So we named our school Stalag 13. And everybody in the administration was one of the characters in the prison camp. Okay? Now, what was German socialism? Nazism. So we were seeing ourselves as the oppressor and the oppressed. We were seeing a mini play of Marxism playing out as Nazism. And we had the comedy, Hogan's Heroes, that we could go watch and get more material from. And we lived, I think, the entire 7th grade year with everybody. And it didn't help that my teacher's name, Miss Huff, she was German. And when she got mad at us, which happened from time to time, she would tell us in her German way to be quiet like this. Holzen Sie den Mund Schnobel bitte! That did not help her because we had dubbed her Sergeant Schultz. I don't know that any of them ever knew that, but they all were playing out Hogan's Heroes every day before our very eyes. That's how a junior high mind thinks. It gets a hold of a little bit of information and then says, this is the whole world. Hey, this is the key to everything. Hogan's Heroes, a comedy based upon making fun of German Nazism by people who had actually been in the war. They were taking every opportunity they could to make fools of the Germans. And that was what they were doing. But we used it as our way of understanding life. And we did that the entire 7th grade year. Wow. It sounds like a mental illness, doesn't it? No, it's called being a junior higher. And so this kind of thinking, this junior high, elementary thinking, is actually what got in on Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. And it's like they just never matured past a certain age. And you know what? I'm suspecting that all over the world, there's a bunch of people that are really 15-year-olds inside. They just never have gotten older than 13 or 14. Now, it's great to have spunk and verve and vitality and energy like that, but we can't afford to think like that. And let me just throw in right here for good measure. It's not what the Word of God teaches. It's not at the basis of the kingdom of heaven with this idea of oppressed versus oppressor. In fact, Jesus would declare that he's won it all, and he is the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, and he has defeated death, hell, and the grave. And so we don't have to operate out of a sense that we are being oppressed, because we know Jesus, and what is he? He's the great liberator. He's the one that sets us free. And whom the Son sets free is free indeed. You cannot oppress a person who's set free. Think with me one more thing. The Apostle Paul. Do you know that he spent a lot of time in actual chains or virtual chains and restrictions as a prisoner of the Roman Empire? But you cannot detect a defeated person who believes he's oppressed and it's unfair. He says, he showed me I would do this. This is going to result in the gospel being preached to the highest echelons of Rome, and Jesus is going to receive the glory. The Apostle Paul would never entertain a pity party, and he would not get on board with this in the least. So I just wanted to throw that. And somebody might wonder, why didn't you bring that up? Well, because this is what's been saturating our world for 200 years, marinating our world. It's not new. It's really as old as the garden. It's really as old as the temptation. It's as old as what the enemy does. And it really is a revelation to most people to hear that Karl Marx left the Lutheran Church, denounced it, and was fascinated with Satan. Isn't that interesting? You don't typically hear that in your history class. Oh, if you go to a Christian school, but if you go anywhere else, you go to college, I guarantee you nobody in college is being taught that. They have to get into graduate work and then do their own research. And then good luck getting it included in their work. So anyway, I go on. Marxism is the foundation. And from that flows this river, socialism. Have you ever heard the word socialism? It's everywhere. And you hear it. He's a democratic socialist. He's a socialist. This person running New York, Mandami, who is elected mayor, he's a socialist. Look at this guy over here in Michigan. He's a socialist. Look at this woman over here in Minneapolis. She's a socialist. On and on and on it goes. Now, some of us in the room, and maybe watching by way of internet, remember that there was a time if people said that, you go, oh, not me, no, what, oh. But that word has been a buzzword. It was the root of Nazism, socialism. And it's been in vogue in different ways throughout Europe and the U.S. ever since. So here's some core ideas of socialism. It deals with group ownership, focus on needs, and fairness. And I'm just going to say, you always have to be careful when something focuses on fairness. Because determining fairness is like one of the hardest tasks there is. Do you remember the story of Solomon's wisdom and the two women that come to him with the baby, said, my baby died, and they switched. There was a switcheroo. And then Solomon says, well, take the baby and divide it in half. You get half, you get the other half. And the mother goes, no, let her have the baby. And he's going, well, we know who the mother is. But it was brought to him in the guise of fairness. Fairness. Some people would stand there and say, yep, cut the baby in half. Or how about this? Well, if I can't have it, no one should. Right? So, children operate that way. Junior hires operate that way. And unfortunately, we have a whole lot of adults that operate out of that sense of fairness. So, group ownership, focus on needs, and fairness. So, group ownership. Factories, tools, and land are owned by the public, workers, or the state. Now, what tends to happen when everybody owns something? Nobody takes care of it because they think somebody should be taking care of it. And you'll even say it. Well, somebody ought to keep this nice. Well, how about if you do that? Well, no. Somebody else, other than me, should keep this nice. So factories, tools, and land are owned by the public, workers, or the state. Focus on needs. Goods and services are made for use and public good, not to make money for a few owners. So they avoid taking things and turning a profit on it or developing it. What happens as a result? No competition. When there's no competition, no incentive to make more goods and services. And as a result, goods and services are hard to find. And then how about this one? Fairness. Tries to lower big wealth gaps and give everyone equal basic support. Do you remember the Wall Street 1%ers? Remember that? That was about, 10, 12 years ago? They were overturning cop cars and setting up tent cities on Wall Street. You remember that? You don't remember that? Oh my goodness. Occupy Wall Street. Occupy Wall Street. What were they saying? Why Wall Street? Because that's where all the money's traded, and that's where all the commodities are dealt with, and that's where all this is happening. So they want to crush that. Now, they don't consider this. Some of those same kids, now, what kind of kids do you think that was out there? Trust fund kids. They're just drawing money. They have time. They're not working. So they're out there doing that. Now, because of Wall Street and because of investment, how many of you have a 401k? How many of you have a retirement? that money's invested in competitive companies. And here's what you want to have happen if you're retired. You want that money to grow. You don't want to lose that money. You want that money to stabilize or grow. And so the irony is that all those people who are retired and all those people who have worked for 40, 50 years and now retired, and their own parents who have set them up on a trust fund, they're getting their money from that. And what are they doing? In the name of fairness, they're saying this: burn it all down. Huh? Not theirs. No. Not mom and dad's. But yours and yours over there and those other people, the nondescript people, we can't name their names. And it's all in the name of giving everyone basic support and equal share. Now, that really resonates with 7th graders. That really makes sense to 7th graders. But anybody who's ever studied economics or studied capitalism or studied free markets or studied barter and trade, studied anything, they know something. That does not work. You end up maximizing. In the name of share the wealth, you maximize the pain and you spread around the pain. So, the main types of socialism are democratic socialism, Marxist, Leninism, and cooperative socialism. You'll be hearing all this political season, you're going to hear this word, democratic socialism. You're going to hear it over and over and over. And the idea is people vote in a free democracy while the government runs key services or major industries. What they want is they want a direct democracy. The United States doesn't have that. The United States has a representative republic with a constitution. And the Constitution is king, not a person. The executive's not king, the president's not king, the courts are not king, and the legislature's not king, and the people are not king. How do you like that one? It's a government by the people, for the people, right? But it was set up as it was enshrined in a constitution, and that law is king. So here's what they want to do. You'll hear this. We need to get rid of the Electoral College. What are they going for? Democratic socialism. Get rid of the courts, add justices to the Supreme Court. Let's do this, let's do that, let's burn this down. And so what you have is this idea, everything needs to be done by direct vote. That was never the idea of the United States. France tried it, and you know what they ended up doing? Beheading everybody. That first of all beheaded the leadership. They themselves were beheaded. And France has changed. I'm just going to put it this way. You want to Google something, not now, please. Unless you're online, I can't, say anything, but we don't want you to be distracted by that. You ought to see how many times France has changed their constitution and their government. Do you know that France went through a revolution close to the same time we did? We have not changed our constitution or our form of government. They have done it multiple times in the same amount of time. So, in democratic socialism, people vote in a free democracy while the government runs key services or major industries. The Marxist-Leninist socialism is a system where a single party guides the state to take over production as a step towards full communism. That's what happened in Russia. Socialism is seen as a step to communism, and then cooperative socialism. Workers own and run their own specific businesses together. And you know what? The nation of Israel tried this from the beginning. And they still, the locations still survive today. They're called kibbutzim, or kibbutz. Now, this was wild. When we were in Israel, one of our guides on our third trip there, when we went over with Living Water Church and redid that bomb shelter, we took just a couple days and we traveled on a bus with a tour guide that was supplied by the company and she lives in Elat, which is down by the Gulf of Aqaba, I believe. And she was telling us she was raised in a kibbutz. But I never realized this until she shared this. I went back later and I realized I heard that from 2 other sources. But at the time, it just seemed so shocking. Other people raised her in the kibbutz. All the children were raised by professionals. Their parents had no time with them. They were considered to be raised by the kibbutz. And there was no such thing as family relationship between parents and children. The children were the property of the kibbutzim. They were cooperative socialists, and there was no such thing as a traditional family. You had your children and then surrendered them into the arms of those that were tasked with taking care of them. And as a result, they've done studies on it, and those kids that were raised in the kibbutz, they have deep issues. And they're all over Israel. One of them happened to be our guide. And the significant detachment from parental figures has been a major struggle in her life. And she was very open about it. And that's really helpful that she can be really open about it. But it can create a pathology in people. So, cooperative socialism. And it's really trying to go somewhere. And that is communism. Some of you in this room remember the Red Scare and post-World War II and the Cold War and the McCarthy hearings and stuff like that. What was that all about? Communism. You did not want to have anybody ever call you a communist. But what's going on now politically? There are people who are running for office in these low turnout elections all over the country, and they are saying, I'm proud of it. I have nothing to hide. I believe, communism is the answer. We've tried all this other stuff. It's time to do that. They've forgotten about Cuba. They've forgotten about all the nations that have tried it. And so communism, here's its core ideas. Common ownership. In fact, not long ago, and I'm thinking it was stated at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, we are coming to a day very soon where no one will own anything and they will be happy. What's that about? That's communism. Because the idea of having ownership and stewardship and responsibility is critical to that. And so they were saying as if it was a great liberation. Who had espoused that? Karl Marx. This was going to be a great liberation. We were going to finally deal with all of the problem between the oppressed and the oppressor. Common ownership, no social classes, and Karl Marx is the progenitor of that. That was his real interest, was communism. Common ownership, no one owns private property or businesses. The community owns everything together. Boy, that's a recipe for disaster. Everywhere it's tried. No social classes. Everyone's equal. There are no rich or poor groups. Okay, everybody's equal. There's no difference here. So Karl Marx, the German thinker who wrote the Communist Manifesto with Friedrich Engels in 1848, was shaping modern communistic theory. But what happened under communism? What's required? You see, capitalism is standing in its way. The monarchies of Europe are standing in its way. Other systems and democracies are standing in its way. What do? Well, you have revolutions. And so what will you hear all the time? Revolution. We need to have a revolution. A way that you most often hear it is, let's just burn it all down. Have you ever heard that? You'll hear it in the news. This stuff goes on and on. In the streets of Minneapolis, in Wisconsin, the Summer of Love. Remember that? You remember the Black Lives Matter and Antifa? Remember Antifa? Yeah. What was it about? Revolution. It's about government control. What they want is they want to be in control of the government, then they want the government to control everything. They don't want the present government to be in control. They want to overthrow that and put their own in place, and it has major problems. So, revolutions. Leaders like Vladimir Lenin used Marxist ideas to spark the Russian Revolution and create the Soviet Union. Government control. In real-world practice, communist governments took total control of the economy and society rather than fading away, as his theory predicted. What was Marx's theory? Everybody has a theory, don't they? Well, I thought I would do this. And the theory is we'll do this and it'll work this way. I'm reminded of something that happened, and Mom will remember this. We had neighbors. They weren't the brightest folks in the county. And they had a big tool shed and beside it an outhouse. And they wanted to burn off the outhouse but keep the tool shed, or vice versa. So they reasoned, if we put gasoline on the half that we want to burn down and get the little garden hose that's hooked to the spigot over here and shoot a flaming arrow into that, when it burns to the point that we need it to stop, we'll just put out the fire. It was burned to dust and scorched the trees. And the firemen for years laughed about her standing there with all seriousness saying, well, we were just going to stop it with the water when it burned far enough. What did they know as firemen? That's a terrible idea. You don't mess with fire because fire is wild. All fire is wild. I mean, you have to do all kinds of stuff to contain it. So they thought, oh, well, this will fade away. But what has happened is communist governments take complete control, and they never give it up. Never. Did Castro? Nope. Did Lenin? Nope. Who followed him? Stalin. Major problems. Central planning led to severe economic struggles, and single-party rule often caused massive political oppression and human rights abuses. What always happens in the tail end of this? They gather people up and throw them in prison. Now, how many of you have ever seen a Che Guevara shirt? It's okay if you haven't. I won't hold it against you. It actually showed up in different T-shirt shops, and it was the cool thing to do, to wear a Che Guevara. He was a revolutionary in Latin America. He personally killed all kinds of people to aid Castro in Cuba. He was just a killing thug, is what he was. And then those guys ended up getting all the money. And what do they do with it? Put it in offshore accounts. They can do and spend it. They have extravagance. And so Castro lived like a king. But what did the rest of the people of Cuba do? Drove, beat up 57 Chevrolet Bel Airs and have decaying original property back in the 50s and 60s without upgrades. It's just horrible. They're living on a beautiful island, beautiful beaches, wonderful place to live. It is a tropical paradise, but it is one of the worst places on the earth to live. And people risk their lives with sharks and waters in the Straits of Florida to get off of that shore and get here because of the oppression and human rights abuses. That's where communism goes. And so, and then you have fascism. I'm going to just hit this real quick because this is the hardest one to define. With fascism, it's extreme nationalism, dictator power, no freedom, and militarism. Germany really typified that. It's the nation or the race above all else. Über alle, the Germans would say. Über alle, over all. They referred to themselves as the Übermenschen, the super race. And the vision of Adolf Hitler was that the superior Aryan race would once again restore the splendor of the Roman Empire under Celtic rule and would rule the earth with the glorious Third Reich. That was his dream. Dictator power. One strong leader holds absolute control. They used to have a different government, but it wasn't long till Adolf Hitler and his thugs burned down the Reichstag, blamed it on different people, and then ended up ascending to power with his speeches in 1932 to finally taking power in 36, 37, 38, and then getting the other man voted out. And all of that was rigged elections and intimidation and secret police action. And finally he took power. No freedom. There's no free speech. No elections. And opposition is crushed by force. And violence and military power are praised as the way to gain strength. Well, these ideas are as old as time. These are not new. This is not new. It just keeps, with every generation, let me just tell you something. This will help you. This will help you. I'm trying to help you here. With every generation, these ideas get newly rediscovered. And they go, oh, what? I hadn't thought about that. It just recycles with every generation. These ideas are as old as time. And these ideas resonate with young people. I'm telling you, a bunch of 7th graders will read it and say, amen. Okay? The thinking of a junior higher, these ideas resonate with young people. Now, I think this is interesting, just possibly related, but I can't help it. I have a trivia mind and I kind of chase rabbits every once in a while. I was talking with some mental health officials and people who understand drug addiction. And this counselor said, you know, if a young man starts smoking marijuana, his maturity tends to stop at the point of the age at which he began to smoke marijuana. When does that usually happen? Junior high to early high school. That's when that happens. The brain stop. It just kind of locks you in. And so in the 60s, what was everybody doing? They were smoking marijuana, man. So all you have to do is combine that with this is a great idea. And those two, I'm not saying smoking marijuana will make you a communist. I'm saying it'll lock your brain there so you think those 7th grade ideas really should be done for the whole world. Those ideas resonate with young people. These ideas, Marxism, Communism, Socialism, Fascism, these ideas resulted in the near extinction of several colonies in the 1600s. Do you know that? Look at the Jamestown colony and then look at the Pilgrims. And those that were practicing socialism and socialized democracy and a form of communism, what happened? They nearly starved to death. Because what happened? You can read the writings. I just urge you to Google that and study the history on that. Because people figured out if we don't do anything, we get paid the same and fed the same as those dummies out there who go and work all day long. So why would we go work? And they had a horrible winter. It nearly killed them. And so finally they said, forget that. We're dividing the land up. Everybody gets a parcel, and you can barter, you can trade. And what happened? They recovered and did well. Socialism, communism almost killed off the colonies in Virginia and Massachusetts. These ideas not only caused a near extinction event in the colonies, but these ideas resulted in the death of 100 million people. Within 50 to 75 years in China, Russia, Germany, Vietnam, and Cambodia. 100 million people. That's astounding. What was at the root of it? A revolutionary establishment of Marxism, Socialism, Communism. In China, it's called Red Communism. Over into North Vietnam, Red Communism. Down into Thailand, Cambodia, and so on and so forth, it was a form of Red Communism. And in China itself, tens of millions of people were hunted, executed, starved to death by who? Mao Zedong. He's been given credit in the recent history as the great leap forward. But it was a revolution that cost 50 to 60 million people their lives. Wow. These ideas are being used by Islamic political leaders in order to connect with those feeling left out. It's a technique of getting the ear of the young people. Why? Because they tend to think like junior hires. That's why. Until something happens and they grow up and they come to reality, they shake themselves, they act very much like the son that went and demanded all of his money and went away and spent it on profligate living. But one day what happened? He came to himself and he said, man, the servants in my Father's house have it better than I do now. And so there are roads and opportunity and possibilities for repentance. Aren't you glad for that? Yeah. But there are people who are feeling left out, and they're being appealed to politically by people who do not have our best interests at heart. So we need to be careful. Marxism, nothing new. Socialism, communism, nothing new. Fascism, nothing new. So we need to be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. And be willing to give a good answer and good hope and good solution for some people that need some help, that have a felt need, that need to be recovered from that kind of mentality and mindset. I know that's not a happy, joy message, but I think we need to hear with what's going on right now. This is what in the world is going on right now. And nothing new under the sun. And rather than being fearful, we can have confidence that God's way is much better. And that there are people who get tired of that and are saying, what's truth? What's the reality here? How does this really work? And we can be there with the answer. Aren't you glad? Yeah. So Lord, we just bow before you and we thank you, for you are the Prince of Peace, and you have rescued us from that endless cycle of offense and being left out and trod down and offended. You have rescued us out of darkness, and you've brought us into your glorious light, and you have placed us in your family, and you have called us to a whole new beginning, only possible in you. Your grace is enough. Lord, I just pray that you'd help us to recover from that weird way that the world is divided between the oppressed and the oppressors, and instead that we would realize that we are called by your name, that we have hope in you. If we have hope only in this life, we are of all men most miserable. But there is a hope that goes beyond in this world and the next. And we thank you for that. And we praise you in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. All right. Next week, what does the Bible say about? And we're going to be working through that. And reminder, any questions, email your questions to questions@visionchurch.ag. All questions will be treated as anonymous. May God's grace and peace be upon you. I hope to see you again next week at 6:55. Until then, grace and peace.